Good evening. It's not quite time to sleep. And tonight I am going to talk about a few things that I think will be interesting to people who make ASMR content. This isn't specifically geared toward ASMR so much as people who perhaps have an interest in greater audio, sound, design, endeavors. I'm a musician and I've been working with pro audio gear for, well, I guess you could classify the duration in decades rather than years. I have a familiarity with equipment and microphones and signal gain structures and all that fancy stuff that audio engineers would talk about. And I think a lot of it is an alien subject for people specifically creating ASMR content. Which is fair, because I think a lot of ASMR artists don't approach making this kind of content from the direction of audio production. I think a lot of ASMR artists are more performative types, extroverts or personalities which maybe feel comfortable performing. There's a degree of comfort in front of the camera. There's a degree to which someone has an unabashed approach to creating intimate moments. And performers of that type may come at this endeavor from a camera perspective, performing for a camera, without thinking too much about the audio. Or if they are, they just don't have the equipment yet. And I can respect that. I respect anybody who wants to create something, a video, an audio recording, a piece of music, a piece of art, a painting, a drawing, a sculpture. Anybody who wants to create something will start with less than the ideal amount of resources and materials. I was that person once. I drew pictures and painted when I was in high school. And I did so before I had paint and brushes and canvases, because I did it at school. where maybe if we paid a fee, the classroom would still provide those materials. And I didn't have those materials for myself. After high school, I started to get into music. The recording process. And I started with a dual cassette deck, a few cables, an inexpensive guitar amplifier, and a guitar. This was the 90s, and there was no Google. So what do you do? When I was in college, I took an audio engineering class, and I learned a lot about microphones. What do microphones do? What type of microphones are there? What do these types of microphones do that are different from what those other microphones do? How do you make the sounds sound the way you want them to sound? And in the end, what is the experience you get from listening to things captured with the equipment? I have some books, those textbooks that I was required to have purchased way back then. I haven't opened them recently, but I guess that is because I haven't needed to. I'm sure there's information there that I still don't know, but the bulk of what I'm working with these days is based on knowledge that I suppose I learned so well from those books that I don't need to research them anymore. So I have a long experience working with some of the basics of audio production. And then sometime in the 2000s and 2010s, those 2 decades, a lot happened in audio production. And I was not going to school at the time, so I kind of had to learn it on my own, if I learned it at all. To that degree, I'm still a bit of an amateur. But like I said from the beginning, if you come at this with a passion to create the art, regardless of the equipment and gear and resources you have, you'll find a way to make it work. And if you have the ear or the eye or the cognizance to make the decisions that make a piece of art better than it could have been, then that's all you need for a starting point. The passion to make something that's better than the previous thing you made. The passion to make something better than the previous thing you made. In that regard, I have a great respect for a lot of you who are starting out. A lot of people are starting out. The environment now is such that people are exploring what they can do, what they can monetize, what they can add into their side hustle. And it's unfortunate that a lot of us now have to. But a lot of us are forced to face what are we good at What do we want to do? What is in our scope of control? And to the degree that artistic endeavors, YouTube videos, podcasts, ASMR, to the degree that we can create content, we're going to do the best that we can. So I want to talk about some of the things that I've come to understand about sound design in an ASMR capacity. And thank you for watching. If you are one of those few people, one of those many people who want to A, listen to me talk, B, learn something about the craft of sound recording, or C, anything else you get out of watching my video. Right now I am drinking a simple beverage which consists of rye whiskey and spiced pear juice and an ice cube. It's quite simple. I don't drink every night. But on those nights I do drink, I'm a little comfortable to the point where I hit record on that little thing behind the lens. Thank you for watching, people who are going to watch the YouTube video of whatever I edit after this is recorded. Anyway, welcome. So, getting into specifics, first, for tonight's little chat, I want to talk a little bit about XLR. XLR. That is a set of letters that I think a lot of you are unfamiliar with because not strictly because of the little poll I put up on Twitter, but because of, in general, a larger data set I have extrapolated from my experiences in the community. I guess it's not something that a lot of people are familiar with, and that's fine. When you start out, you don't know what things are. And even if you haven't started out, if you haven't been exposed to certain things, they're just going to be alien. That's kind of the definition of not being exposed to things. I'm going to do something silly and just type in XLR. Google, I don't actually remember offhand what the letters stand for. External line return. Invented as a means of passing large electrical currents cleanly while providing a bunch of other stuff. Basically, XLR is a format of cable by which you send an audio signal or any electrical signal. In the analog world, sound is sent through analog electrical impulses over a cable. On one end, you have something creating the signal, and on the other end, you have a piece of equipment interpreting it. So on the sending end, you would have a microphone, and on the receiving end, you would have a preamplifier, which refers to a piece of equipment which takes the signal and turns it into not sound, not yet, but it makes the signal a thing. Then after that, the signal that is a thing gets converted into maybe a digital representation of the sound, or it just gets sent to an amplifier and speaker, where it is returned into the physical world as a vibrating sound wave in the air. Most microphones are connected to the XLR standard. It's a tiny, well, not tiny because there are much smaller connections, but it's about 3/4 of an inch diameter connection with 3 pins. 3 pins. 3 pins. And that's how most microphones are connected. But computers do not have XLR connections. So you need an interface. An interface. An interface is just a device which knows how to convert analog sound signals into data that can be sent over a USB connection. I've said XLR so many times. That's what my mouth wants to say. USB, Universal Serial Bus, is the method by which, in this day and age, most devices connect to computers. And it's a very convenient way to make a lot of things happen. So, a microphone turns the sound in the air into an analog electrical signal, which goes down a cable and into an interface, where it is converted into digital data that a computer can understand and play around with. A lot of ASM artists use a very popular microphone, such as the Blue Yeti. It's a USB microphone. The problem is Sound is not digital. Basically, that microphone is a microphone and an interface in the same thing. All the electronics of an interface are built into a housing that looks like a microphone. And it has a little knob called volume. And it has a little plug that says USB. And it has some other things on it. I don't know exactly what it has. I do not have one of those microphones. But also inside that housing is a microphone. Or rather, two of them. If it's a stereoscopic refers to 3D vision. Stereophonic refers to 3D sound. Binaural, two signals, two audio signals, one for each ear, in order to capture a sound with distinct, discrete signals to each ear independently, you need a stereo microphone. And I think the Blue Yeti is a decent microphone for capturing binaural sound. It then, in its own housing, converts it to digital and sends it over USB. I personally think that you can get better results by separating your microphone and your interface. I also think that doing so might be a little more expensive. So I am a fan of the Blue Yeti USB microphone insofar as if you don't know the principles of sound design, it takes care of a lot of it for you. It makes it simple. You plug it in, you open up Audacity, and you can record the sound it hears. That's very convenient. But what happens when it breaks? When it breaks, you need both a new microphone and a new interface. So I happen to be a fan of keeping your interface separate. When you do that, you can upgrade your microphone and not lose the value of what you've already bought. If a USB Blue Yeti microphone breaks, you have to buy a new one. What do you do with the old one? It's junk. I don't know how much they cost, but I would not want whatever amount it cost to get one to go to complete waste. And I'm not going to look it up. But I do know you can get an interface in almost every price range based on your needs. In fact, right here, this is a Shure X2u. It is a one-channel interface. You can plug right into almost any microphone. If it doesn't actually plug into the microphone, you just need a cable. This interface plugs into USB. Look at that. 48-volt phantom power. Little button. A lot of microphones need phantom power. This thing provides it. You can plug headphones right into it. The gain of the microphone, the volume you're listening to, the balance between what you hear from the microphone and what the computer is sending back, if that's how you want to play around with it. This is a one-channel interface. And this is basically what's built into a USB Blue Yeti. This particular device costs $100 or so. I've seen cheaper versions from other manufacturers of essentially the same type of device for much cheaper. What else do I have? This is another interface. This interface I keep in my bag, and it's my mobile interface. This is a Behringer U-Phoria UMC202HD. It is a 2-channel interface. This thing has inputs for a left and a right. It can do stereo. It's got a USB plug, so it goes right into your computer. It's got phantom power. It's got outputs so that you can put it to speakers. Or you can plug in headphones. But this provides you gain control over 2 channels, 2 microphones at once. I got that interface for about $100. Interfaces are not expensive. I also have a mixer interface. I have a Behringer mixer that also has channels of XLR and also has some rudimentary controls like EQ and gain and effects output routing, sends, returns, that kind of thing. That might not be important to you yet, but it gives you options in the future. You can get mixer interfaces for as low as $50. Decent quality. But the big advantage to having an interface that's distinct from the microphone is that once you get the cable, you can upgrade to any pro audio microphone you want. From a $10 crappy dynamic microphone to an awesome quality $100 microphone, maybe a $300 large diaphragm condenser microphone, or a $3,000 ribbon microphone you'll only find in Pro Studios. The point is that most of these microphones that are exclusively XLR, they don't have onboard electronics or anything. Those microphones don't break. They don't stop working. You plug in the cable, you plug them into the mixer or interface, and if the interface works fine, you hear the sound. One of the cool things you can do with a mixer interface, for instance, say you buy a mixer interface for $150, which I think you can get 4-channel, 6-channel, 8-channel, even with onboard effects. That means you can plug in 4 or 6 or 8 different microphones at the same time. Why would you want to do that? I think an adventurous ASM artist would see the advantage of having multiple microphones plugged in at the same time. The one I'm talking into mainly right now is the Behringer ECM. It's not on camera. But guess what? You've also been hearing the sound from a Shure KSM27 that's just been hanging up here and panned slightly to the side. And I think I have it panned to the wrong side versus what you're seeing. But no matter. I could have another 2 microphones, one set up on this side, one set up on this side. And they're all live. Right now I don't. I just have the one right there and the other right here. Not doing anything drastic, but they're both capturing the room I'm in. You can have a lot of fun with audio if you have the resources and options. I think a USB microphone limits you. But if that's your starting point, I'm not here to shame anybody. I'm really not. I'm not a fan of that microphone, but I have liked a lot of content produced with that microphone. The Blue Yeti. I think a lot of people place too much importance on it when there are cheaper options. A $50 interface and a $68 microphone with a $5 cable can create just as good sound as whatever you spent on a Blue Yeti. It's really just all about knowledge. What do you know? And there really aren't a lot of resources out there geared specifically to ASM artists opening up their Amazon wish list and looking for the first time, what should I get? Because the only resource they have to go on are what other ASMRists have used, and I've noticed a lot of ASMRists use the same stuff. And I don't really want anybody to feel limited by the gear that the people they watch use, thinking it's the only thing available. It's really not. The world of pro audio is vast. One of my next videos, I'm going to do a comparison. I'm going to throw back to back 3 or 4 or 5 of the microphones I actually already have in the room. And if you can hear a difference between them, which if you have headphones on or a decent system for monitoring audio, you should be able to hear subtle characteristic differences between these microphones. But my goal is to show you some options, show you what things sound like. Even for someone like me who has been researching pro audio for longer than I have had an ASMR channel, I've wanted to hear, what do microphones sound like? Well, here I am, about years later. I have a decent little handful of microphones, and I can play them one after another for you, and you can hear what they sound like. If you hear one part that says like, oh, that sounds really good, then maybe you can check it out. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I have some whiskey to finish. But maybe you found some of what I've had to say valuable. And if you haven't, or if you have not received the appropriate ASMR experience from my delivery of said information, then you don't have to watch it again. Thank you for watching.